The Alberta Men's Survey was developed by over 50 men and 10 women concerned about men's well-being and the promotion of healthy, nonviolent relationships. On April 28, 2015, prior to launching the survey in the community, the survey leadership team convened for a full day of research training. This training was organized by the Faculty of Social Work, University of Calgary, in partnership with the Ethnocultural Council of Calgary, City of Edmonton Community Services, and the Alberta Father Involvement Initiative. 27 participants attended, including community members and organizations, agencies, funders, government representatives, academics, and students. The research training includes several modules, one of which is presented here. The purpose of this research training was to prepare the leadership team and research assistants to implement the Alberta Men's Survey and to also develop a community-friendly research teaching series that can be used by others. We would like to extend our appreciation to the Ethnocultural Council of Calgary and the United Way of Calgary and Area for making this video series possible.
Part of our objective, I think Vic, myself, and Michael have talked about a lot, is how do we build capacity, support community, and do all kinds of great stuff through a process that's called a survey research. So it's so much beyond the research itself. People that may know me got to see I wasn't prepared with the PowerPoint, and I also started at 11:30 last night. And so there are drawbacks to Ravens, but there are also positives, and the positives are the ideas. And I think that Michael, myself, and Vic have been plotting and planning for a long time. But so when I came here today, I wasn't just thinking, oh, I'm coming to a research training day. I'm coming to the formative meeting of a provincial men's consortium on violence prevention. And that's where I am today. I don't know if anyone else feels that way. But I think this is our very first meeting of this provincial body that's going to be leading some of the stuff on healthy relationships, men's well-being, and violence prevention as an outcome, right? Because we all know if we do certain things differently, we're not going to have the kind of violence that we have in society. It's an outcome. It's a product. It's not actually our beginning point. And so I'll talk about that. So Vic and I also had another dream. What was that?
The dream.
Men's Health Conference. Yeah. That's what we're also going to do.
Before we were talking about Men's Action Network, actually we were planning for a big Men's Health Conference in Calgary. Yeah.
So now we're going to do it.
It's a dream that is coming up and shaping up, right?
Yeah, it's happening today. So we want you all to be involved in that. So we've got lots of plans, and it's so great. I was so excited to see every person that came in this room. I was thrilled because I thought, oh my God, something good's going to happen. And it is. So anyway, so thank you. Just wanting to say that. But for today, I guess my job with Vic is to talk a bit more about the actual survey that we're going to be administering. So it's funny, I was just checking all the emails flowing yesterday, and I'm like, okay, how much participation, and I'm a grassroots social activist, and it's like, how much participation do we need? And when do we move on to the next phase of our participation? And I've worked with Diane, you'll know, right? It just keeps going, getting bigger. But then to a certain extent, we want to land on, so it's this, I think community-based research, as Michael was saying, is this sort of mix of participatory opportunities and action and the rolling, and then also having some outcomes that we can talk about.
Yeah. So the researchers becoming also the subject of the research, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
And it's more than, I think it's a combination of science and art, participatory research.
Yeah. And so we'll have lots of articles we'll put on the Dropbox around that. And so what exactly are we doing? And so Michael talked a bit about community-based research. We've all learned about that. I think that that's what we're trying to do. We understand that there are power dynamics which are inherent, which we cannot cancel out. But we've done something, for those of you who've been along for the ride from the beginning, we've developed a, what we call a data sharing agreement. Who was involved in that? Some of you were part of that, right? Yeah, we were involved in that as a group. And so does anyone want to say what that is in 2 sentences for those who weren't? Anyone? Brian, or do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I think with the data, you get the raw data, but when it's all calculated and results are coming from the survey, it's open for all participants to use and to disseminate to their own communities and use in whatever way they can benefit their communities.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But with the clause that I think due recognition to the group who contributed or who are working in this project. Yeah.
So that's the idea. We're working against the power structures in the academe by at the same time, I guess, using those processes, which ethics is part of that, which are positive, but at the same time trying to work. So I would say I'm working against myself in the university, because typically those things wouldn't happen, and communities oftentimes walk away feeling quite disgruntled about their relationship with the academe. So we're trying to do things differently. And so exploratory research, and so I think that what we're trying to do is we want to ask men what they think. It's pretty much that simple. We've been doing a lot of work on men and boys. I worked for a few years with Shift and some of the formative work and some other projects around men and boys, but we actually haven't asked men what they actually need, what they think, how they're doing, those types of things, which we know are pretty important if we're going to develop strategies for healthy relationships and violence prevention. So that's what we've decided to do. I know that some of you are familiar with the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters. They put out some research on how many men feel it's okay to slap a woman, how many men feel that certain circumstances women are responsible for being sexually assaulted. We had 40% of men think that there's certain circumstances in Alberta. So we were quite shocked by some of those things. But at the same time, we thought, okay, we know that picture, what don't we know? And that's where we're going with this research. Rebecca had mentioned that we're doing a needs assessment survey. And so what we're hoping to do is really to develop our understanding and then to sort of understand a little bit more. I like the example of what needs are by Witskin and Alshut. They said, need is the gap between what is and what could be. And I think that that's what we're looking at through our survey. Collaboratively developed. So how many people have we had on this survey that have had some input now? Michael,
Yeah,
Vic?
26 from Calgary, I think, and lots of men also coming from.
You guys have had your roundtables.
Yeah.
You've had,
Oh, yeah, I haven't thought I'd want to go back.
yeah,
It's big then.
it's big.
Yeah.
How many academics can say they've had 50 people involved in developing them? So I was talking with, I think, Rebecca about internal, external validity in quantitative research. I thought, well, we've got our own forms of validity, our own forms of reliability in our survey, and that's all of you. And so I think these are different ways of looking at it. And not only do we have that, but guess how many conversations have ensued because of the fact that we're developing this as a group, right? Lots has happened, at Cam's point about action, lots has happened in the development of what we call the product, which is a survey.
Yeah, and then the diversity of also of the individuals participating. We have people from ethnocultural communities, from the Aboriginal communities, and from the Euro-Canadian communities or the White Canadian communities. So it's very diverse.
And so, are we representative? No. That's okay. Are we biased? Yes, we are. So let's just have that out there and be done with it. I think that this survey is about men talking to men. This survey is based on men's interest and in violence prevention, right? That's why we're here. We're not here just, oh, you know, we have intentions. We have intentions. We have bias in what we're doing. We don't have, sorry, Men's Rights Edmonton here, do we? Do we have Men's Rights Edmonton here? Maybe. But there's a reason.
They found out.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Michael's part of that.
Yeah, he's the leader of it. So, right, but that means we're biased. I mean, of course, that's not that they wouldn't be welcome. Actually, there's work that needs to be done with these guys. I hope that you do it. You know, there is lots of bias in how we're approaching this, right? We want healthy relationships. We want a world without gender violence. We're also very interested in anti-racism, anti-colonization perspectives. We're interested in intersectionality. We're interested in men's well-being. We know that there are a lot of guys who have had lots of childhood experiences of violence that have not been addressed, and there's no room to address it in our society. We have lots of bias. So we're outing those biases here in our survey, and the way we framed our questions in the survey is based on that bias. Now, I was in quantitative courses in my PhD program and arguing all the time about bias with the lovely instructor who's now Leslie Tuddy, who's supporting us, by the way. She was like, Leslie, can we just get through this? Because I kept saying there's bias everywhere, in even why you choose to study a certain subject. There it starts. Why didn't we do, I don't know, dog training today? So there is bias. We're just being more articulate about those biases.
And even if you don't verbalize it, it shows in your non-verbal actions.
Exactly. And Vic will point them out. And so, excellent. And so the idea about needs surveys is we're not here to represent all men. That's not what it's a group of men and women finding out what other men think and what they need. And that's all we need to know. So when people start to ask you about generalizing your findings, say that's not the purpose of a needs assessment. That's the quick answer. Brittany? How did this happen? So it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I think that Men's Action Network got together as part of our own project, and we were thinking we should do a men's needs survey. We should we're at the point. We've been meeting for a long time now. We need to kind of extend out to other men. And then we said, well, it's not just about needs. It's what supports they need too. Like, it's one thing to have needs, but what about supports? And then we said, ooh, needs sound needy. So maybe we should just call the men's support survey. Think about that time between here and here. Michael Hoyt arrives on the scene, and with him, I think everybody else. And I think Ryan's been involved there. There's a lot of you who've been involved for quite some time, and then it just got bigger. Michael, what would he be called? Is that a raven that gathers people, gathers jewels, and and then we decided that a men's support survey sounds less needy, and then. So much we're saying, well, let's just call it a men's survey, because that just sounds less worrisome if you're going to fill that out.
But you're missing something, eh? It's the Men's Health Conference.
Oh yeah, I know exactly. That's right. Oh, it is. It was the Men's Health Conference. Yeah, and so Vic and I have been plotting and planning for a long time, and some of you have been with us in that. And then we thought, well, everybody's in, so why not call it the Alberta Men's Survey? So that's sort of where we're at, but it's not just the name, it's sort of the development of what's happening here. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we've got, 6 or 7 cities and towns now. Michael?
6. It'll be 5 from Edmonton area.
Yeah, 5 from Edmonton area and Calgary. So, so the idea is for us is we're expanding, but at the same time we're wanting to move forward. So that's where we are now. Here's some of our partners. Some of you is there anybody who's not represented in one of these that needs their name there? Just let us know. But it's a lot, right? It's pretty exciting. And all of this has happened through informal networks. And when we talk about participatory action research, those networks need to exist before you undertake something like this. You can't just pull trust relationships out of nowhere and do something like this together. So not to talk too much about this, because I think that, so when I think about violence prevention, I think about what happens before violence, right? What all happens to lead to a situation where it becomes okay for violence to take place? And of course, people can define violence in very many ways. Poverty is a form of violence. Systemic oppression is a form of violence. We're just talking about sort of the idea about relationships here. And so if we look at well-being, if we look at healthy relationships, if we look at the right services and supports, because guess what? Services doesn't cut everything. There are all kinds of natural supports in the community that happen after 9 to 5 that need to be supported to make us all feel like we've got someplace to go at 11 o'clock on a Friday night when stuff happens. And so if we look at these, then we're looking at violence prevention, which is the topic of our survey. And so we might not see that in all of the questions, because some people say, okay, what does that got to do with preventing violence. I think it's got a lot to do with preventing violence. Some of the things that we're not addressing so much in our survey is gender roles. And that's something I think we talked about, Mike, a little bit. Because we know that violence is, yes, a learned behavior. Violence is associated with experiences of trauma. We haven't talked so much about gender roles and the indoctrination of all of us into gender boxes and how that plays out. I'd say gender and sexuality boxes, actually, and how that plays out in gender dynamics. And we've talked about how to have that. But I think that our healthy relationship dialogues and what's going to happen during and after our survey is going to be more of an opportunity to do that. I don't know what others think. Because we can't ask 500 questions. That's the difficulty, right? We need to snap it up and finish it off. So yeah, so these are our geographic regions. I think we're going to land on those, unless anybody's in disagreement. That's who we've got involved, and I think we're going to stay with that. So that means that people responding to our survey need to kind of live, or at least mostly exist. We're not going to check addresses, but mostly exist in one of these areas, right? So we can say, you know, we've had this amount from Leduc, we've had these many from Edmonton, and we'll be able to do that with our survey. And so we talk about the sample, which Rebecca talked about sample. I mean, when you use qualitative and participatory language, it's a bit different from quantitative. So we usually don't call people samples, but they are, I mean, from a strict research perspective. And so we developed this criteria for participation. So that means that myself, as a woman, wouldn't necessarily be participating in this survey, right? So we've got some criteria, unless identified as a male. And I think that these are important around gender fluidity and respect for gender fluidity, and not to fit into the boxes. So if someone identifies as a male, they're able to fill out our survey. And I think it's really important. I think it's an anti-oppressive approach to our survey. That people need to be in a geographic region, right? The ones that we've upped, and they should be over 18. The reason why 18 is so, we were just talking, Grant, we were talking on the way up about why children aren't allowed to vote in this election. We would overthrow the Conservatives quite quickly, I hope. But there's an idea that 18 is some kind of magical age. I don't necessarily agree with that, but ethics does. And so I think that if we decide to go under 18, we will open a whole other, yeah. So these are some of the tensions, right?
Yeah, and but this is very inclusive, because if you look at some of the domestic violence research, sometimes one of the qualifying criteria is that they should not be in violent relationship in at least 8 months or 6 months, 18
yeah.
months. But this is very inclusive, anybody,
Yeah.
after they're 18 years old.
Exactly. So we're balancing that. We're balancing that. And then, anyone know what maximum variation is? People in the room? Cam, research oriented. So at the same time as having a criteria which narrows, we want to have a maximum variation, which means we want to try to get as many voices on this survey as possible, right? If we just get, all dads from age 45 to 50 who are white, who are middle class, who work at the university, right? What does it just tell us, right? We're excluding a lot of men there. And as we'll talk about in our recruitment strategy, how do we get a maximum variation? How do we get young guys? How do we get Aboriginal men, immigrant men, fathers, men with disabilities? That's through our recruitment process. So one thing kind of falls into the other, right? And we'll talk a little bit more. And that was the impetus for why we're actually doing paper surveys, not just online. Right? Trust, relationship, these types of things. And these are also, by the way, the things that make ethics very nervous. Very nervous. And Cam, you'll attest to that. You can see what hill we're going to have to go up with that survey, with our second recruitment strategy. And then, so guess what? It's non-probability sampling, right? Which Rebecca referred to.
It's all good.
Yeah. There you go. Okay, I know our time is getting short. And so the survey itself, does everyone have a copy of that in your folders? We're using Surveymonkey, so the Patriot Act is, that's a real deterrent. And we were thinking about using a different platform which is a Canadian platform, which is called Flow, Research Flow?
Fluid Monkey.
Yeah, Fluid Monkey.
Fluid Survey. They've actually closed and now they've gone back into, they've been combined in Surveymonkey, so.
Well,
I know.
if,
Well, someone said do not use
This
them. They were a
infrastructure.
nightmare too
yeah,
before they
if,
closed.
if that is an issue, you know, I have Canadian-based servers that we could look at setting up a survey on if it comes to that.
Maybe.
That requires a bit more work, but
Yeah.
if that is a barrier, having to use the U.S. service.
It's also the ethics issue as well with, so SurveyMonkey, as you'll see in the introduction of the survey, we have to write this thing up about the Patriot Act and how their information could be pulled on that. And that for me, even if I read that, I would think that's really scary. So we are at that point where we're dealing with this type of national security issues on everything. But I was trying to think, could we get away with not putting that in but that may not be allowed from ethics. So just, so anyway, that's just a problem. If anyone has a solution, let us know. But, so the surveys, I think we're just about there. Right now, it's been vetted by Leslie Tutty. Dave Estes looking at it. And Thomas Polson with the Ability Society and the Disability Action Network is reviewing it right now for sort of how this survey would resonate with men with disabilities. So we're just kind of doing that extra
So things
check.
like plain language.
Yeah, he's sort of checking that. And so we've had a hard time with the concepts, right? Even the concepts of well-being and all that, trying to work through that. And one thing we're going to add to the survey, if you go to the very end of the survey, it says, and remember, it'll be on SurveyMonkey, so it'll look better, but it says, do you want to be involved? And if so, leave your email address. We're going to be adding another checkbox, do you want the results of the survey? So some people may not want to be involved, but they kind of want to know what happened with their information. So we're going to provide 2 opportunities for that. I think our time is going. So that's where we're at right now. Just maybe take that home, take a good look at it. If there's anything that you find that you need to, you want to share, you can let us know on that. And I guess the idea is that the survey is to get the conversation going, and we're also hoping to get more focused approaches through our focus groups, our healthy relationship dialogues, which actually we've gotten some support through Alberta Human Rights to sort of take this out and have dialogues with it. So it's not over yet, it's just a conversation starter. That's what we're hoping to do with the survey. Okay, next, trying to be quick here because I think I'm over time. So 500 to 5,000, should I say 1 million? I don't know.
1 million.
I know, getting bigger. The issue with ethics is that they like an opening and a closing. And so what Michael was saying, are we really going to get 5,000? Like, that's scaring me. So it's not that we have to get 5,000, it's just that for ethics, if we got, say, if I said 500 to 2,000 and we got 2,004, we would have to cancel out those 4 respondents. So the idea with putting a larger number on the end is that we can get up to that amount. Will we get more? I don't know. I was thinking of trying to get away with just putting 500 or more and seeing what happens. So my idea is we'll have at least 500, I think, easily among the people in this room through our contacts and networks. And then, we're looking at targeted recruitment. So targeted in the sense that we've all got organizations, associations, we're all going to be sending it out, we'll put it through our social medias. So we've got ourselves as starting points, but we're also incorporating a snowball sampling method, which, like a snowball, rolls and collects and gets bigger and goes here and there. And sometimes when you start rolling the snowball, you don't know where it's going to land. So that's what we're saying, there's 2 recruitment strategies. These are both things. This will make ethics nervous too. So we'll see, and that's kind of our process. Our method. We've got the 2 methods, right? The online method and then the in-person method. And I think you guys are going to talk more about that in-person.
Yeah, the in-person.
Do you want to just say in a couple sentences what that looks like?
Yeah, the in-person one is that there might be instances wherein the main method that we wanted for them to fill up is the online, but there are instances wherein you may have some community members who prefer the in-person, And I think there's a need for us to demonstrate, or you want
Maybe
to-
at the next thing.
That maybe at the next. Yeah, the in-person we're in. You have to have that conversation with the person. You will assist him or go him through the questions. Yeah.
And there'll be selected research assistants
Yeah,
among us who
among
are going to
us.
do that work, right? Who
Yeah.
are going to say, I'm going to be one of those folks, because not everybody's going to do that in this
Yeah.
group. And so implicit consent, does anyone know what that is? If you give me a piece of pizza and I eat it, I've kind of consented to eating that pizza, right? And so I haven't signed a form. I may not have even said to you yes, but in this case we're doing a little bit more than just eating the pizza. But a lot of times in research we have these things called consent forms, which we send out and they have all the details, and then people sign it, and then we do the work. So in the case of this survey, it will say, and it does say in the beginning, that if you decide to fill out the survey, you are giving consent,
Yeah.
right? And so online, they'll be able to download a copy for themselves. And then in person, those who are doing the in-person will actually give them a copy, right? So then that way they walk away with it. So yes, so in order to fill, if you're agreeing to fill it out, if you do fill it out, it means you've agreed to fill it out. So we're going to try and once again move that through ethics, because having separate consent forms for an online survey in particular is very problematic. We've got qualitative and quantitative questions, as we've noticed. Our group loves the please explain. It's so social work. Please explain yourself. And so we want to know more. And so in the end, we're going to have rich data, right? We're going to have we're going to say, you know, no, I don't think men, yes, I would be interested in being involved in violence prevention because of, or no, I'm not comfortable with that because of. So we will know why. We will get some of our why questions answered. And then there'll be an opportunity for further involvement. So the idea is, if we're thinking we're building this movement, right, there'll be more people in the movement by the time we're done with this work. In a few minutes, our guys are going to come up and do some role plays. But the idea is that we want to do a positive engagement, right? Even if men decide not to fill out the survey, they'll leave with an idea of what we're doing, right? And I think there's a really good quote in something I was just reading, and I can't remember, but sometimes good research can, and the articulation of an expressed need can then become a want, right? So if you get a chance to articulate something you've been thinking about, it then moves to a different level of consciousness, right? So we're hoping through our survey that that articulation can happen in one way or another. Even if people walk away saying, no, I don't want, you know, I don't want to be part of that. They'll start thinking, why didn't I want to be part of that? Or yes, I do, and these are, you know, this is how I'm filling it out. And then, oh my God, I want to work on this a little bit more. So positive engagement for men, consent versus coercion, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about coercion. That's always a real worry, particularly of person-to-person research. We need to follow our ethical procedures, which they will define those for us. So a lot of what we're saying right now is hypothetical. We're hoping that we're going to be allowed to do things the way we're saying. Safety. Safety is going to be huge, and Michael's going to talk a little bit about that. We don't want to harm people through this survey. There are a lot of us. We're all on a journey of healing and recovery from whatever traumas we've all had in life, because life can be hard. So our objective is not to re-traumatize or to push people's buttons and then run off, right? And leaving them there with nowhere to go and no one to talk to, and leaving them in distress. One of our objectives is, hey, if we're out there, why not provide information referral to people? Why not give them a card or a sheet? And Michael Hoyt has developed something. Why not let people know what's going on, what kind of supports they can get? So we're actually supporting some of the services in doing that. We're hoping to get more men involved, and then Brittany's like, okay, it's done. And more to come from Vic and Michael. So ethics pending, and thank you very much.